Hi everyone. Salesforce Development Day 28. Let's start the session. Let's see what we are going to learn today. Today we will see that what is previous session overview. We'll discuss about the previous session overview and we'll talk about the static SOQL and then dynamic SOQL. What are the differences between the dynamic SOQL and the static SOQL we'll see. And we will talk about the use cases of the static and use cases of the dynamic both. And also we have a limit. What is the limit? How it is going to apply for the queries? And what are the where classes? Where classes for the non-parameterized, where classes for the parameterized. We have discussed the two different methods, parameterized, non-parameterized. So how we can do it, where class for the non-parameterized, parameterized. Then finally, we'll have a conclusion, today's interview questions. Now, before that, what did we learn in the last session?
SOQL,
Sorry.
SOQL, SOQL,
Right,
governor limits,
right.
ways to invoke SOQL.
Okay, you guys might have to speak louder. I barely hear your voice.
How to use SOQL in developers console.
Okay, so last class we have discussed about the SOQL query, how to write the SOQL query, Salesforce object query language, right? So why we use the SOQL query to retrieve the data from database inside the business logic, in order to retrieve the data, we will use the SOQL query. And also we have seen what is static query and definition of the dynamic query and what are the governor limits that are applied for the SOQL query, right? So what is the governor limit for querying the data? How much we can query? How many rows we can query? Limitation.
50,000 records we can.
50,000.
We can query 100.
How many SOQL queries we can write it?
Hundreds of
100 SOQL queries we can write it.
100.
Right? So let's see how to invoke it using the Apex program. So as part of Apex program, SOQL is divided into the two types, static and dynamic. Static SQL. Static SOQL is, last time we have seen how to write the SOQL query in the developer console, right? So we have implemented the static SOQL query. So static SOQL query is, in this, we cannot include any column or a condition during the runtime. Whenever we are running we are executing the program, during the execution of the program, I cannot pass the data to the SOQL query. While implementing the program itself, we have to define it, right? So that means while implementing the program, developer has to know that what is the data that I'm going to pull it from the database. If developer knows, then only we will go for a static, right? And whenever we are preparing the query, we have to specify the conditions. When I say conditions, where conditions, how many records we are going to pull it, everything we need to specify. That means when we get a requirement from the client, so in that requirement, developer has to get a clarity of the requirement. When you know the clarity of the requirement, then only we can implement the static SOQL query, right? Otherwise, we will go for a dynamic query. So dynamic query, for example, let's say that user is searching the in our page. If you go to the Salesforce, for example, we have a search here. Do we know that what they are going to search? I don't know what user can search here, right? There is no clarity here. User can search account, user can search lead, user can search cases, anything they can search it, right? When we don't know exact what they are going to search it, users, then we will go for the dynamic SOQL. Otherwise, if I know that exactly, okay, I'm going for an object and I'll go for an account. In the account, wherever the rating equal to 1, then I'm going to query the data. So in that case, we have a clarity. When we have a clarity, we will go for a SOQL query. Right? So syntax we have seen. Select is the standard keyword and list of the fields. What are the fields that we are going to pull it? So do not try to mention anything full, like in account, I have a 50 fields are there or 100 fields are there. Not necessary that we should provide the 100 fields in the select. After select, don't specify all the fields. In real time, what we do is only whenever we are implementing the static, we know that what are the fields that I'm going to pull it from the database. Only those fields we have to specify. Because when we specify the unnecessary fields, automatically it is trying to pull the data from those fields also, right? From the database. So in that case, it is unnecessary effort that we are putting into the database side. So that's the reason in the real time, we do not specify all the fields. If requirement says that I need only 5 fields, then specify only 5 fields. But if the requirement says that you need all the fields, how you are going to pull all the fields? No. In the programmatically, I have 100 fields in the object. All the 100 fields I wanted to query. How do you use it? Select all. Right. Right. And another way, online. How do you pull the all the fields from the object? So we have something called schema, right? So in the schema, we have to specify dot account and then dot fields. If you specify schema by using the schema namespace, you can get all the fields that are available inside the single object, right? So if you want all the fields, simple is using the schema namespace. Right. So tomorrow, if you add any field also, schema will take care automatically. Right. Static SOQL is always write it into the square bracket. And example, select ID, comma name, rating, industry, annual revenue from account. So only 5 or 6 fields I'm pulling the data, right? So static SOQL queries will be executed automatically by default. When I say automatically, whenever the business logic is getting executed, business logic is nothing but Apex class. I'm clicking on a button in the Visual Force page. When I click on a button, the backend business logic has to be executed. When the business logic gets executed, automatically SOQL query is going to execute as part of the business logic. Then it is going to pull the data from database and give it to the business logic. Right? Then business logic take the data, whatever the next action has to be performed, it will perform all the actions. So that's about the static SOQL query. Take a notes of it. Done.
Then have this schema in my code as well as SOQL, static SOQL in my code. What is the order of execution? Like
First, it will execute the schema. Then after that, it will execute the SOQL. Because you need to get the fields. If you want to get the fields, before that line, you have to write to get the fields from the schema based on the object. And you need to store that fields into the one container. That container, you have to pass it to the SOQL query.
schema will be stored in cache memory. Is there any?
It's a Salesforce has provided the namespace. Okay, so we have already discussed the schema, right? So the namespace is which is already provided by the Salesforce. There are multiple purpose, like a record type. If you want to know the record type, usually by using the SOQL query, you can run the SOQL query and get the record type ID and name. Instead of a record type ID name, instead of running the SOQL query, what you can do is you can use the schema namespace. When you use the schema namespace, the backend garner limits whatever is there. It doesn't apply for the schema. Done? Okay. So let's move on. So before the homework, let's see one program. Assume that the scenario that I'm going to implement right now is, let's assume that I wanted to pull all the contact records. Pull all the contact records. Assume that Visualforce page is calling the Apex. Okay. So from the Apex, I need to pull all the records that are available in the contact object and pass those records to the Visualforce page. So the requirement is the logic, the business logic, which I need to implement to get the list of the records that are available inside the contact, right? So this is what I'm going to implement the program right now. So let's say file new Apex class. Let's say that I'm going to pull contact. So let's say contact helper. My class name is contact helper. And on top, we have to write the details. This is important in the real time. So what is the description? Why we are implementing this particular class? And who is the author? And when it is created? And then also we will add last modified date. Now description is, this class is used to pull, let's say this class is used for helper class for contact. And who is the author? Let's say Swapna ID. And created by today, 08/08/2023. Now, the logic that I'm going to implement here is to pull the record. In order to pull the record, the first thing is that I need to implement a method, right? So in order to implement, I'm going to use the access modifier public and then static. I'll be using the void method because I'm not going to return anything output of this. Now we have a contact, get all the contacts. The method name is get all contacts. right? This is the method. For method also, we will write a @ description. What is the purpose of this method? And who is implementing this method? Because tomorrow, if somebody has any question, let's assume that developer is joined, new developer is joined. And if the new developer wants to understand what is the logic is written inside the method, then what they will do is they will contact the whoever is the author is there. They will go to that person and try to get more information from where this method is called, why we are using this method, what is the purpose, why we have written this. Is there any story that came from the client? So we will try to get more information. Now here, the description is get all contacts from the object. Let's say get all contact records, and author is the same. And also we will add created date also. Now here the logic, the first thing is that first I need to pull the records from the database. Pull the records from database. And then I need to loop through the records. And within the loop, I'll be printing the each value. So these three steps which I'm going to do it. Now, first of all, to pull the record, I need to implement a static SOQL query. Now, static SOQL query, we have to write it into the square brackets. Now, the starting keyword is, we will use select. And then let's assume that I'm going to pull only few information, ID, comma, name. And what else we have here? If I go to the object manager, contact, fields and relationship. Let's assume that I'm going to pull the email, phone, preferred time. Right? So I'm going to pull email, phone, preferred time. From which one? Contact. From contact. This is the static SOQL query. At the end of this query, we have to end with semicolon, this colon. And I'm going to store this data inside the list of the contact, because the output of this SOQL query is list. The output of this SOQL query is list. I'm going to get it. That means more than one record I'm going to get. When we have a more than one record, all the records, I can store it into the collection. List of the contact. That means in order to hold the collection of records, I'll be using the data type called list collection. So, and I have given a variable name which is called as a con list. Right? So for using this con list, right now this con list is holding all the records. So whatever the records that I have, for example, if I duplicate this, now if I go to the contact object, in contact object, click on this, let's say contacts. Now assume that I have a 43 records are there, right? So all the 43 records are con list is holding. Now the second step is I'm going to loop through the con list. In order to loop, I'll be using the for loop. For loop, and what is the object here? Object is contact. So specify the contact, give a variable name, colon, whatever this con list is there. I need to give that con list, because this con list is holding the 43 records. I'm going through the each record right now. In order to go through the each record, on the right side, I'll be giving whatever the variable name that is holding the records. I will specify that name here. And on the left side, I'll specify the actual object name. Okay, and this is variable name. There is a variable name we have to give. Why we need this variable name? Because inside this, if I wanted to refer any of field. I wanted to print the contact field. Name, I wanted to print it. Email, I want to print. So whenever I wanted to print, how can I refer? Using this variable, I can refer. Let's assume that I'm going to print the values here. In order to print, let's say here system.debug. System.debug. Let's say this is the name. Plus, I'm going to use the keyword called con. This keyword dot name. This keyword dot name. Similarly, I'm going to print system.debug con.email. Con.email. And then we have a system.debug con.phone. So like this, we can print the information. Now you can give any variable here. It's not necessary that CO and con only we have to give. You can give any name. It's a developer. But only the thing is that it should be understood by anyone. Like you cannot give like ABC in the real time. You cannot give like this. This cannot be understood by anyone. Because sometimes clients will open your code and they will review your code. Right? Which has happened with me also. Whatever we have implemented, I was part of the architect. So I got a question from the client saying that, what is the purpose that you are looping through this for loop? Right? So sometimes they ask a question about your code also. If the client said there are people who knows the Salesforce, right? So they will ask the purpose of it. For example, if they give this code to anybody, right? So for example, we are done with the implementation. Now support is taken by another team that is from different company. We are doing the implementation, but support is done by the another team. So that team might ask a question that why you have written this logic like this. So we have to be at least understood. If you are not there in the company also, this code should be understood by anyone. So that's the reason whenever you are specifying the variable name, you specify the variable name, it can be understood by anyone. Because inside this, after 30th line also, you might use con dot something, you will use it. Now, after going to the after 31st line or a 40 line, if you have a con, you should know that, okay, con is nothing but that is pulling the data from con list. Right? So this is the logic where we are using the static. Now, in order to execute this, how can we execute this? Debug, open, execute. We have to use class name dot. Get all contacts. Now let's highlight this, execute. Right. So here debug, let's see the debug. So this is the first record and then second record. And what I'll do is let's put something here in order to divide this, each record data. Now let's execute again. Debug. Now, this is the first record, second record, and third record, fourth, fifth. Like this, I have a 43 records, it is printing it. 43 records, it is printing the values. Now, sometimes what happens is, now you are writing the one line to pull the records. Second line, you are doing the for loop. You are doing it in the two lines. Few developers, what they does is they combine these two lines. Now, the reason is, instead of doing it directly here and storing into one container, instead of that, you can provide this SOQL query here. Okay, but you cannot write a SOQL query inside this for loop. Inside this for loop, you cannot write a SOQL query because easily you will hit the Garner limits. But you can write here within the for loop. where we are declaring the contact con list is there. So instead of a con list, you are providing this SOQL query. Now let's say here I'm going to implement one more method. Public static void, and let's say here contact helper. Now this is get all contacts records. Now this time, previously we did it in 3 steps, right? Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine the step 1 and step 2. This is the step 1 and step 2. I'm going to combine these two. How I'm going to combine it? Directly in for loop. Directly in for loop, I'll specify the contact con select ID, name, email, phone, preferred time from contact. Directly I can specify here. Directly I can specify, then I can print the values. Right? So 2 steps we can combine into the single one. But so in real time, you might see the code like this, or you might see the code like this. Okay. But what is the benefit if you use this? The benefit is sometimes you don't have any records. When you don't have a records, so what will happen here? It's not even go inside, right? So directly you are specifying here. But if you write it like this, you need to add one more line here. If conlist dot is empty, conlist dot is empty. If it is not empty, if it is not empty, then only go inside it. Then only go inside and then execute the for loop. Right? Sometimes this is, and also sometimes what you have to do is DML operation you have to perform it. So when you have to perform the DML operation, that time you can check the condition inside. Right? So let's take a record. Now we have a few objects which we have created. Let's say books. Now we have a books object. Now let me delete this record. Delete the second record. Now I'm going to, instead of a contact, I'll refer the books object. Books is the custom object. Books is the custom object. And what are the fields that are available? We have just name is there. That's it, nothing else. So what I'll be using is, instead of a contact, I'll be using the book. Book is the custom object. Now let me copy these methods. Custom object, book. So get all books and get all books records. Now here I'll specify the whatever the API name is available, the book API name. I'll specify the book API name. We just have a ID, name. We don't have any other fields in the books. Now same thing, I'm going to use it here also. But here I'm querying the books object, but this side I'm storing into the contact. So immediately Salesforce is going to show an error, illegal assignment from list to list. Because the right side you are querying the books, left side you are storing into the contacts. So it should be stored as a books. List of the custom object, whatever the custom. So right side and left side, it has to be taken the same. Whatever the object you are querying it, that's the same object you need to store it into the list. Now let's say here I'm going to store it as a book list. If the book list is not empty, then you will be going through the book list, and here you will take the books. Let's say this is a single record book, book.name and the book.id. ID, and we have a name. And then finally, we are going to store ID, and then we have a name here. Right? This is the first way of implementation where I'm querying separately, and again I'm doing the for loop. Similarly, the second one which we have here, books, and here I'll take the book, book.id, book.name, book.id, book.name. So we'll have a ID and then name. No, perfect. Now I do not have any records inside the books object. Book object is empty. There is no records at all. If I query this query also, what will happen? It will give me the empty records. Now let me query here. Query editor. Now let's execute. What happened total? 0 records are there. Now let me execute. I'll execute this one as well as the second method, first method, both the methods I'll execute. Debug, contact helper dot get all records, and then all books records, as well as we have a get all books. Contact helper dot get all books. Now I'm going to execute these two. Execute the highlighted one. Now, did it give any error? It did not give any error. Whether you go for a first one or a second one, it will not give any error. In the first one, what we are doing is, I'm checking if it is not empty, then only loop through it, right? But here, whenever I do not have any records, automatically Salesforce is going to take care of it. It will not break the code, right? So when you write a SOQL query here, system Salesforce is automatically going to take care of it. If there is a records, then only it is going to print the values. Otherwise, it will not print. But your code will not break anything. When it will break, when you are doing the DML operation. For example, you are inserting the record or you are updating the record, right? So that time you might be have to check the condition. If there is a data, then only go for a DML operation. Right? Clear? Any questions? Okay, so let's go for a homework for static SOQL. Write an Apex program to fetch all the records from the object and represent on the debug log file. When I say debug log file, so whatever this log is created, either you can download this log or else go to the Salesforce and here search for a debug log. Search for debug log. Go to the debug logs and create a new debug log. When you are running the program, first you need to create a debug log on your name. Now, whoever is you have logged in, here I have logged in as a April batch. That means I wanted to create a log for April batch. So I'm going to select the user April batch. And the start date is, you can specify 1 hour or how much ever you are going to run it. So based on that. So let's assume that I'll just take it 10 minutes or 10 minutes I'm going to take it. And the debug level, SFTC console, click on a save. So what will happen once you save this record? As soon as you run the program, there is a record that gets created here. You can download the log, right? You can download the log and highlight the debug points. That means with yellow color, highlight in the documentation and paste it in the documentation, send it to me. So that is the first assignment. And the second assignment, write an Apex program to fetch all the hiring manager records from the object and represent on the debug log file. Third one, fetch the user records. We have a user object, right? So from the user object, which are the users you have? Maximum you might have created the 10 users, right? So in the admin class, so you have to pull all the records from the object, user object, and represent that on the debug log. So those are the 3 homework assignments. Take a notes of it.
You think the debug log file which we have prepared,
Yes, that's mostly used by whom?
what is the use of perspective management?
What do you mean by prospective management?
Like in debug, in developer console, we have one perspective management.
Where did you see that?
Debug perspective management. Under debug. They right there on edit debug is there. Top file layer debug.
Okay, this we will talk later. So this is few more options directly which is available inside the developer console. We will talk that later. Yes, you can fetch the child records if there is a, whether it is a master detail relationship or whether it is a lookup relationship, everything you can fetch it. Now let's assume that I am in the contact, right? Now I wanted to get the account name. If I wanted to get the account name, let's suppose that account and contact, what is the relationship it has? Master or lookup? Lookup relationship. So let's assume that I wanted to bring the account name or account rating. So in that case, directly you can use account dot, you can use the rating, right? Instead of another query, what you can do is you have already parent connection is there. When you have a connection, directly you can use the account dot rating or else account dot name, right? So if you use this from contact object, right? Now if I execute this query, executed, now I have a account rating and account name, right? It is pulling the information. Also, you can write another way. Another way is, for example, subquery, which is called as a subquery. So subquery, how we will write it? On outside, I have a contact, right? And then if I wanted to pull the details of it, now you can say here, select ID, comma, name from account. Click on executed. So here it says that accounts, because it is a child.
Contact. Preferred time from
No, we have a preferred time in the contact.
contact here for the account.
Here, account is not a child for contact, right? Account is parent.
We'll see that later. After the dynamic SOQL query, we will see. Is everybody taken the notes of it? homework. Done. So next one is dynamic SOQL query. So dynamic SOQL query, in this approach, we can supply what are the columns that I'm going to pull the records. What is the condition that I'm going to specify during the runtime. So during the runtime, I can specify the columns that I wanted to pull it, or also I can specify the condition during the runtime. So based on that runtime, it is going to execute the query. So whenever you wanted to pass the information during the runtime, then go for a dynamic SOQL query. So we need to store the dynamic SOQL query inside a string. Now, if it is a static we are storing inside the collection, list of the collection, right? Now, dynamic SOQL query, you need to store it into the string. String variable, you have to store the data. Now, syntax for this is string variable name. Then within the single quote, you have to specify the SOQL query. Now, this is normal syntax. Let's see the example. Example is string accounts query equal to whatever the query is there. I have written here inside the single quotes, right? So whenever you specify the inside the single quotes, that means that is a dynamic SOQL query, right? So here I'm storing into the string, and this string we need to pass it to the database.query. Let's assume that here I have an account name equal to ACNE in increment, right? Let's assume that this is the name. Now this name, I'm going to pass it to the SOQL query, right? So when I pass it to the SOQL query, I can specify here name and the account name. Let me show you that. Now let's go for it. Let's say debug, execute anonymous. Now let's assume that I'm doing the SOQL query. Now for SOQL query, I'll say string ACC query equal to select ID comma name from account. Okay. Now query is same. Whatever we have written in the static, same thing we are writing the query in dynamic also. Okay. So you can specify the exact query. Also you can specify in the dynamic query. Or else if you want to pass the data, you can pass it. Let's see this one first. So for example, exactly I'm passing the query. If I run this query, it will be executed and it is going to display the name, right? If I execute this, it is going to provide me the list of the records. Whatever the records are there, 77 records, it is going to provide. But I do not want to run the query right now. I want to define the query, but I do not want to run the query now. somewhere in the 10th line or 11th line, I wanted to run the query based on the certain condition. Now, in that case, what we can do is we have a something where condition, right? So where we can specify the, let's assume that where account name. Now let's assume that here I have a account name service group. Account name is service group. If I say here where name equal to service group. If I click on a query, what will happen? Only one record it is going to give me because we have applied the where condition. Now in this case, what I'll do is I'll specify the where name equal to. No, I do not want to specify in the here. I do not want to specify the name. What I wanted to do, I want to pass this condition from outside. When I say outside, I need to declare here string. Let's say ACC name equal to service group. Service group. Now this service group I will be providing here, right? This service group I'll be providing here. Now before that, I'll just show you this single query. Now this is normal query, and then I'm going to pass the database dot query. Inside this database dot query, I'll pass this ACC query. I'll pass the ACC query. Now I'm going to print. Either you can print directly this one database dot query and you can pass this ACC query here. Let's assume that I'm going to print directly. Let's say system dot debug. I'm going to print this. Let's say execute this. Execute the highlighted one. Now it will print me the data. Now this is the ACC query. This is ACC query. And it is pulling the, this is the query, and the data which we are getting is all the 77 records we are pulling the data, right? All the 77 we are pulling the data. Now let's assume that if you want to pass it the where condition. Now if you want to pass the where condition you need to pass ACC name. When you have a ACC name, now here where, now ACC name is a string name, right? So that means you need to put plus whatever the ACC name is there, right? If you write this ACC name plus ACC name, what will happen? What is the output am I going to get it? What is the output am I going to get it? Let's say system.debug. System.debug ACC query.
Ma'am, you forgot name field in the where condition.
Sorry,
You forgot to mention name in the where condition.
I did not get.
Ma'am, you forgot to mention the after where condition you not mention the name field.
Why I cannot hear you guys on my I already have. Can you talk now?
You forgot to mention name field in the where condition.
Yeah. Can you speak now? Sorry, I could not able to hear.
Ma'am, in the where condition you didn't mention the name field.
Right, I have not specified the name field. Name equal to, now I have specified the ACC name. Now, if I execute this, how my query is going to build? Now click on this, execute the highlighted one. What it is saying that ACC name. Why it is not able to identify? Because I have not selected. Now here, execute the highlighted one. Now ACC name is service group, and it is saying the select ID comma name from account where name equal to service group. But if you see here, service group is coming as a normal string. It is not in the quotation. Usually, if I run this query, what will happen? Will it execute it or not? It will give me the error. Now, even if I pass it to the database.query, what will happen? It says that execute the highlighted. It says that service is expecting the colon because the word is a string. We have to pass it to the string. Now, how can we pass it to the string? We have already discussed. How can I put it into the single quotes? Escape. How do we specify the quotes? Sorry? Single quote. How can we specify the string within the single quotes? We have already discussed that. Online. So we have a query here. Now, whatever the query is there, how can I add a quotation here? How do we specify the quotation? Basically, I wanted to add single quotes here. ACC name slash plus. Okay, is that right? So you are saying that this plus is that right? If I execute this, it will give me the error. Last one. I need to remove this. But what will happen to this one? Place is taking as a string or is it taking as a
Inside name, we can keep escape character.
inside name escape character? Okay. How do we specify? Now it is taking as a completely a string. Now if I say here execute this, what will happen? Slash plus ACC name plus, which is not right. Online, we have already discussed this, how to provide the string in the quotation. How do we provide it inside the string?
Right, within the brackets.
Within the
Brackets.
which bracket? We tried that ACC name. So plus ACC name here and then plus. Right. Now, if I see this, click on execute the highlighted one, missing the colon character. Unexpected token ACC query. Execute it. No. So this is converting into the different way. If I try to execute this, ACC query is unexpected. See, normal, this is a static, right? Till this point is static. Now I need to add a ACC query. If I want to add a ACC query, definitely I need to concatenate the ACC name, right? If I wanted to concatenate the ACC name, I need to use the backslash, right? Escape or backslash, which I need to use it. Right? So here I need to provide the double slash. So which I need to provide the ACC name. This is for perfect. When I give this ACC name, what it is happening, it is coming as a string, but it is not coming as a string in single quotation. Now, what is the purpose of this? Back when I say slash this, what is the purpose of this? Well, somebody has already said that slash and colon. What is the purpose of this? What is the purpose of it? We have already discussed this. Offline, online. At least try. What is that?
Line break.
Line break. Where did we see the line break? Now let's assume that if I add, what will happen this? Place is taken into the string.
Yes.
Right? Now if I add this,
Slash.
somebody is saying escaping, it skips the character. Next line, okay. Escaping,
Skips that character.
skips the tag.
It's for new line escaping, I feel.
Sorry. New line.
It is escaping for the new lines.
In Apex, whenever you wanted to add a single quotes, whenever you wanted to add a single quotes, what you have to use is, if you use this, what will happen? This will convert into the single quotes. This will convert into the single quotes. Now, if I try to execute this, now let's say debug, what happened? It is converted into the single quotes. Whenever you wanted to convert into the any in Apex, not only in the software, even in the business logic also, we will use colon, slash forward slash, and again one more time colon. So when you have this, this is gets converted into the single quotes. Right? So this, whatever is there inside this, it gets converted into the single quotes. It is converted into the single quotes. Now here I have added the forward slash and two single quotes that gets converted into the single. Again, now here I have added before this because I need to add that, and then this gets converted into the single quotes. Always, anytime in the business logic, wherever you need a string, use the forward slash and then single quote, single quote. Now, if I try to execute this, execute the highlighted one. Now let's say debug. Now it is printing the ID and the name equal to service group. ID, name equal to service group. So in dynamic query, similarly, you want the ID. ID is you wanted to pass it from outside, right? So till this point is 1. And then again, you need to add ID, name, field, account, all these things you wanted to add it from the outside. Basically, whatever the values are there, right? So these values you want to add this. Right, in that case, what will happen is you can provide all these values inside the SOQL query just by adding the information. You can pass it from outside. You can pass it from outside. Now here you can add all the information, whatever the ID, name, list, how you are going to pass the values here. Assume that I have ID, name, 2 fields are there. I wanted to pass these 2 fields from outside. Instead of writing it here, I wanted to pass it from the outside. So which container holds the list of the fields? Which container holds the list of the fields? Now I wanted to pass the
Parameterized method.
you can pass the what you will pass in the parameter. How do you pass it?
From parameterized.
Right, but what is the how you are going to store the data?
Again, use
So basically, I want here single value is stored in the string. Now I wanted to store ID, comma, name, comma, all these things I wanted to store it into the one container or one data type. Which data type will I use? List of object.
that's all.
Why as object? Why do you use the S object?
And we don't know any type of data which we are storing.
But these are the string.
Okay. Strings will directly take one list and we can store it.
So you have to store it into the list of the string and then pass that list here. Okay, that is the homework. You need to store this values into the list of the collection list and pass that list collection here. Right? So when you pass the list collection, it should not be a string. Those are fields. It's not a string. Those are fields. So it should be taken as a fields. Right? So that is the homework. Try it today. If it doesn't work, we will see tomorrow. Fine. Online members. Will you guys able to try that? Okay, so take this homework. So what you need to do is query the account records using the dynamic SOQL query. Using the dynamic SOQL query, query the account and pass the fields from outside, where condition also you need to pass it from outside. So the assignment is build a dynamic SOQL query by passing the fields from outside. as well as where condition also you need to pass from outside. Where condition is basically name, you need to pass it. Account name. Account name you need to pass.
Ma'am, if suppose we have in the column value, we have any single quote in the written values, so how we can fetch that?
What do you mean by return value? So fields we
Uh,
do not have any strings.
No, ma'am. What I'm asking that in the query itself, suppose the name service group, right? In that service group, if you have any apostrophes or something like that, how?
Right. So how do you use it? That's what we have seen in the last time. So here you have it like this we have. Now tell me, how do you do that?
That already know that, ma'am. How you apply, right? That is fine. While reading the values from the DB, that won't have any impact, right?
Yeah. So let me show you this. ID comma name. Now I'll just run this. Execute the highlighted one. Let's see that whether how it is building the query. So query which is building services group, right? Now I'll go to the account. We have a services group. Let's modify this. Services group. Save. Email is mandatory. @gmail.com. Click on save. Now we have a services group. Now this services group, now I'm going to execute it. Okay, so if I try to execute it, it should pull me the database.query. Unexpected token. Sorry. Services group, okay. Let's execute the account first. Let's copy this. Where name equal to services group. Right, so we need to add slash there. Now, if you add one more slash here, then what will happen is it is able to query. So you can try this in the query database.query.
But in real time, we need to check for the single quote, ma'am, for passing parameter.
No, you have to pass, you have to build here. Now, what will happen if I write like this, the single quote is implemented. Along with the single quotes, I wanted to add one more here, right? So I need to add one more. So that means if I write this is single quotes, right? Now in between this, I need to add one more slash, I need to add it. If I want to add one more slash, then I need to write now let's suppose if I say here, let's execute this. ACC name. Now let me print the ACC name first. Let's execute the highlighted one. Right, so debug only service group. Now I need the slash also here. If I want one more slash, so what I'll do is I'll add it. You can build this multiple way. You can build this. Let's say that I wanted to add a plus, and here I'm going to add a slash. And then we are going to end this here. I'm going to start this from here. So let's go ahead and build this ACC name. So now I have a ACC name, which is a double quotes will be having it. Now again, I'll print this, execute it, slash, which is not taking it. Let's say debug only. Now here it is the one. Now you can pass this data to the ACC name, and then you can query the information. Let's execute it. So debug only. Now we have a services group. So whatever the query is expecting, that is the what we have passed it. Now I can execute the complete one. Let's say execute. Now it is going to give me the one record, which is a services group. So it's up to the developer. Now, whatever the data you wanted, you need to add the data here. Now, sometimes we have a hyphen. So in that case, hyphen, you have to pass it, right? Without this concatenation also, you can build it, right? Without concatenation also, you can build it. You do not need a concatenation. You just need to add a double slash here. If you add a double slash, then it will be automatically implemented. But few developers, what they will do is they will separate this word and they will separate this word together and then concatenate it. Without place also, you can add it. Fine?
Backslash and one apostrophe.
Yes.
Just backslash apostrophe, yes.
There are multiple ways to implement it. So if you try this, also it works. Fine. Any questions? No. So let's go with dynamic SOQL query. So what we will do for dynamic SOQL query, we use the database.query. Database is the namespace in the Salesforce. So within the namespace, we have a method called database is a class, sorry. Database is a class. In this class, we have a method which is called query. So by using this query method, we can pass the information query, and then we can get the result. And the result of the database query will be the list of the collection. Now you can store into the list of the collection. Example, database.query, account query. You can store it into the list of account, and the variable name is list accounts. Variable name is list accounts. If list account is not equal to empty, then what you can do is you can loop through the account and print the whatever the values are there, you can print it. Fine. Take a notes of it.
What will be the like, static available there? In this we are consuming more features.
Yes, that is right. In the debug log, it will be automatically closed. You need not to worry about that. It will be automatically closed.
The debug option will close.
Done.
Monastery with the value of largest capital.
Okay, let's see the use case of it. So write an Apex program to fetch all the case records from the object and store them into the map collection. So far, we have seen how to store the data into the list. Now we are going to see how to store the data into the map collection. Map is having the two things, key and value, right? So in the key, either I can store the string or S object, I can store it. String set of the collection or a string I can store it, right? In the values, I can store the string, set of objects or list of objects, I can store it. Now let's see that how can we store the information in the map. How can we store the information in the map? right? So let's go ahead and implement it. Now, before going to that, you can see that how much time it is taking to execute the specific Apex class. We have a progress here, right? In this progress, you can see what is the each ID and when it is started and when it is ended and how much is the duration. What is the duration of it? Seconds, milliseconds. It is going to start with seconds, right? So everything you can see in the progress. In the progress, every record there is a unique ID that gets generated. This is the sequence number. And here, what is the order of it and what is the description, how it is executed, whether it is a status is finished or running or a start, when it is ending it, what is the seconds it has taken, if there are any errors, what is the error, even this Ajax and delay, this is from the Salesforce side. If they are executing anything Ajax or delay, then it is going to display the information here. Now view state, this is for the Visual Force page, not for this. Okay, also you can check here, debug. Now, if you want all the logs, instead of a log only, if you want all the logs, you can select here, switch perspective. Do you want to prefer all the logs? Now I have selected here. Now what is happened here, if I click on all, now whatever the latest log is there, that latest log execution, what is the execution tree, right? And this is the logs. And what is the source? Source is execute anonymous. We have seen could not be loaded. So something we have running in from the execute anonymous, right? So when we are executing that this query from the anonymous window, how it is executed, what is the lines it is executed, right? And what is the execution tree and how much performance it has taken, what is the duration of it. Now, if you expand this, like it is going to say how many times it is blue, how many times it is executed, right? So this is one time execution. Now this is the duration 24.78 and the heap size is 1233. Right, these everything you can see all the information about the log. If you click on the debug, switch perspective on. Okay, if you just want to see the debug, it will show the debug. If you just switch to the log only, it will show just log only. If you switch to the analysis, if you want to switch to the analysis, you want water. So analysis is the one. So we are going to see the analysis, right? So those all information you have, you can check the details. Now, for now, what I'm doing is I'm going to enable all the logs. Debug. I have enabled all the logs. Let's save this. Now let me go ahead and create a new Apex class. Now we are going to implement a dynamic SOQL query. Dynamic SOQL query. Now description. @description. And the author who has created, last modified, right? So description is this class used for static and dynamic. Both I'm going to write in this. Let's say here, I wanted to change the Apex class name. While creating it, file new Apex class, I have specified the dynamic SOQL query. Let's assume that I wanted to change the Apex class name. If you change here S and static dynamic, if I click on a save, automatically my class name will be changed to the static dynamic SOQL. And the author is Swapna IT. Created date is today 08/08/2023. Right, within this, I'm going to write a method public static void. Let's say that I'm going to implement this is a static map. Static map. Now let's say here at the rate description, author, and created date. Holds the data. This method is used to hold the data in map collection. Author is Swapna IT. Now what I'm going to do, two things which I'm going to do. First thing is I'll query the SOQL, which is a static SOQL query. I'll implement static SOQL query, and then I'm going to, whatever the result is there, result, I'm going to store it into the map. Now, if I want to store the result into the map, can I store directly the result inside the map? Result inside the map that I wanted to store. Can I store that directly inside the map? Now I'm querying the SOQL query. When I query the SOQL query, what will happen? If I query the SOQL query, now I'm querying the SOQL query. When I query the SOQL query, how my data is going to retrieve it? In which format it is going to retrieve the data? Collection. But in the collection, we have a map and list, both are there. How it is going to retrieve it? List. So here, I'm retrieving the data using the SOQL query. When I retrieve the data, I'll receive it in the form of the list of the records, where I just have a values. These all are values, list of the record values. So it is directly storing into the list. I can store it into the list. But if I want to store it into the map, map contains the key and value. Map contains key and value. Now, if I want to store it into the map, can I directly store the information into the map? It's not possible. First, I need to store it into the list of the collection. Then I need to loop through the list of the collection. Then I need to store it into the map. So that's exactly, I'm going to do it right now. So list of, let's say case, what is the requirement? It says case records. Case list equal to select ID comma name. What else we have? Status, subject description, from case. Now I'm going to loop through the for loop case CS colon case list. Right now I'll loop through this map, and what I'll do is first I'll initialize the map. Map of key, I'm going to store the case ID, comma, I'm going to store the record, case record. I need to store the case record. You are feeling sleepy? You want water? You want water? Map of ID comma case. Now here I'm going to say case map. Case map equal to new map of ID comma case. I have declared. This is the initialization. Right? So this is the initialization. I don't know what is that. So I have taken here case list. Right? So this case list, I'm looping to the case list. Now what I'll do in the map, I'm going to store the values. So I have a case map. Now how I'm going to store it? Here we have declared it map of ID comma case. Map of ID comma case. Now this map of ID comma case, how I'm going to store it? In this record. Every record has a ID. Every record has a ID and then it has a record. Every record is associated with the ID and then single record. Single record. ID and single record. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to distribute this. Whatever the ID for this first record is there, that ID I'm going to store it into the key. And whatever the complete record is there, complete record I'll be storing into the case. Right? So here what I'll do is case map dot put. We have a put. Inside this put, it is expecting the key and the value. Key is a case ID, which is a CS dot ID. Value is CS, which is a complete record. Now, I'm going to print this outside of it, system dot debug. Case map. Similarly, I'm going to print it inside it. Let's say in loop case map. Right? So this is what we have implemented. What is this case map?
It should be CS, ma'am, on 19th line.
On 19.
It should be CS. 19th lines, system.debug in lookup. Case map you have written.
Why it should be CS?
But you are printing in the for loop, right?
Right, but what I'm trying to print it here, I'm printing the map. I'm printing the map.
Okay.
Whatever I'm storing inside the case map, that I'm printing it. This is the single case map. What is the error it is saying here? List of the case list equal to select ID, comma name from case. What is the error there? Do we have a name field in the case? Name is a auto number, right? So we do not have a name. Static void, and here let's say that ID comma description. No, done. Now let's execute static dynamic SOQL query debug. Static dynamic SOQL query dot static. If I execute this, execute the highlighted one. Let's open this. Debug, switch perspective, all. Now, this is the execution log, and the execution tree is service tree execution 39.12 duration, and this is the heap size. Static map, the one which the method which is there, the static map duration, the method execution duration is 22.68. Right? And these are the logs, execution logs. What are the execution logs are there? That is the execution log, and here is the debug log. Every record we are printing the ID and complete case record. Right? So we are printing the ID comma case. Inside the case, we are just pulling the ID comma description. And this is the source and jump and what are the variable execution stack. Now, if I open the normal debug, so this is the single one inside the loop. Single one inside the loop. Similarly, we have a outside the loop also. It is printing the value. Now, in case if you want to print few more values, you can go to the object manager, search for a case, and look for the fields. What are the fields that are available inside the case? Get that field's name. Let's say here, status, there might be a status. Right? You can use the status. Instead of a description, you can use the status. Right? Same thing, the homework is that you need to do it with the dynamic. Right now, we have written the static SOQL. Right? So you need to simply use the dynamic SOQL, same result you have to provide it. Right? That is the assignment. Take a assignment. Implement a dynamic SOQL query to retrieve the case. To retrieve the case, implement dynamic SOQL query to retrieve all case records and store the records inside the map. Inside the map collection. That's all for today.